Jim Murphy was a
That's good.
professional baseball player in the Chicago Cubs organization whose entire identity was built on making it until a vision condition took the game away from him forever. What he did next changed everything. He sold half his possessions, moved alone into the Arizona desert for 5 years, and emerged with inner excellence. The book A.J. Brown was reading on the Eagles sideline during a playoff game, sending it from number 523,000 on Amazon to number one overnight, and eventually becoming a number one New York Times bestseller. His training system has been used by world number ones, Olympic gold medalists, and Super Bowl champions, and he's here today to talk about his new book, The Best Possible Life, and why the path to extraordinary performance and the path to a life of deep fulfillment are the exact same road. Jim Murphy, welcome to the Grateful Podcast.
Jack, thanks for having me.
So, Jim, you said that self-centeredness is the root of fear. And I find this so interesting because myself, I grew up immersed in the psychology of sports. I was a huge baseball player, soccer player. I'm a rock climber. And I found that there's something that is fear-based that holds you back, holds the best performers back even from success at this crucial moment, whether you're up at the plate, whether you're going for the finish of a boulder. And you say that that fear is rooted in self-centeredness. What does this self-centeredness look like? How can you identify it, and what do you do to fix it?
Yeah, good questions, Jack. So the basic problem that I share, and you said so well, that self-centeredness is the biggest challenge that we face in performance and in life, and it leads to fear. And so what happens is, and the big challenge is that we need to be self-reliant when we start out in life. We have to learn how to feed ourselves and look both ways when we cross the street, and just take care of ourselves. And so there needs to be this self-reliance, but that self-reliance becomes problematic because we start to build walls that imprison ourselves, and we're created for a relationship. And if you want to reach your potential, you have to surrender your little power for a much greater power. And so the way it looks is or let me start with how it works. So when we think about ourselves, our subconscious, which is two main roles, is to protect us and to line up our results and circumstances with our beliefs. And when we think about ourselves, our subconscious reminds us of all our failures and mistakes and weaknesses. And so we feel bad thinking about ourselves. And so we compare ourselves to others, but there's always someone else who has more and better things than us. And so it leads towards this fear. And kind of there's two primary movers of the fear. One is that our deepest need is for love and acceptance. And so if we feel like we're not going to get loved and accepted, we're going to have fear because it's our deepest need. It's in our DNA, created for relationship. And so our greatest need is for love and acceptance. Our greatest fear is to be rejected of that acceptance. And so whenever we go into a social situation, there's always this question in the back of our minds: who am I, and how do I fit in? And do I fit in? And will I be okay? Am I enough in this group right here? Am I enough to this person I'm talking about? Because I shared this in The Best Possible Life, which turned out to be, it's a book on the spiritual life, but it turned out to be kind of a summary of inner excellence. And I shared about how this psychologist 100 years ago, he said it so eloquently: I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. In other words, that's a lot, but in other words, when I go out into the world, what's happening is that I'm thinking about, what does Jack think about me? And then I want Jack to think well about me because subconsciously I know my deepest need is to be loved and accepted. And so because I want Jack to think well of me, I have to think about, well, what is he thinking about me, and how can I respond to what he's thinking about me so I can get him to think good about me. And this is all constantly going on because of our deep need to be loved and accepted.
Huh. So you've talked about how desire is kind of at the root of this too, right? And when you were in your professional baseball career, you had this deep desire to get a hit that actually caused a fear of getting one. Just like we have this deep desire to to be loved and accepted that causes some of our anxiety around it. How can we go about determining whether our desire is rooted in something that isn't fear-based? I'm not sure what the opposite of that would be, but a desire that is more virtuous, or something that is fear-based. I think that could help people really understand maybe why they're blocking, because there's some people that want something so bad, but underneath there's a fear, and there's some people that want something so bad and they just get it, right? I think there has to be some
Yeah.
differentiation there that must be very small.
So let's talk about desire for a moment. So desire is, by definition, something that in the future that you don't have that you would like to have. And so you mentioned me hitting. My desire to get a hit was so strong that there also right next to it was the fear of not getting a hit. What if I don't get a hit? And so then everything became about reading the circumstances and am I getting closer? Am I getting farther away from getting what I want? And this emotional response was hurting my chances of getting a hit. And this is what happens in our life: is most of us, and most of my life has been spent um, going through my day, looking at my circumstances and the results and how people react to me, and uh, judging it, evaluating it, and reacting emotionally to what I think they're thinking about me or what I think the circumstance means about me and my future. And so, desire is powerful and important, but it also can be dangerous because it can create these expectations and fears that are really impair our ability to do something great. And so, we want to learn to channel our desires to something that's powerful, empowering. Like in Inner Excellence, and in both books, really, at Best Possible Life as well, I talk about David Foster Wallace, and the brilliant writer.
Yeah.
And he said that everybody worships. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist. Everybody has something that they worship, and that's your God. And I totally believe it, that whatever you love most is your God. And well, how do you know what you love most? Well, it's what you think about most, what you fear most of losing, um, what has made you the most anxious. That's your God. And what I want people to do is learn how to love most what's most empowering. And that's what the book, The Best Possible Life, is about, is learning how to love most what's most empowering and learning how to devaluate your life and see um, what has held me back. Like, for example, the ego is a part of our mind that I define as a part of the mind that's always threatened, always comparing, never satisfied. You're always on trial. It doesn't matter how good you did today, tomorrow you're on trial again. And it's not a fair trial, because even if you get a good verdict, now you're on trial again in the next moment. And so that ego is one of the biggest challenges we face. In fact, when I think about inner excellence, I think of self-mastery. When I think about self-mastery, I think of mastering the ego.
So there's like, basically when you have a desire, right? It's this deep want to have something that you don't have yet. But what I'm hearing you say is you can either focus on the fact that you don't have it yet, and you can focus on all the metrics that surround, all right, maybe my batting average is lower than I want it to be. Maybe I haven't gotten a hit in 4 games. Or you can think about like the fact that there's still the possibility, you didn't say this explicitly, but there's still the possibility that you can get that hit. It reminds me a lot of old success principles mentioned in Think and Grow Rich, for example, where they talk about beliefs and focusing on the positive aspect of the belief, of the outcome that you desire, not the thing that you're fearing. And it's about a subconscious focus on that. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. So beliefs are what's running our lives. And I define the belief as a subconscious comfort level with what you feel is possible in your life. And we all have these desires, but the problem is that you don't know what's best for you. Like, we've got the Masters golf tournament here soon, and who's going to win? Like, Scotty Scheffler, world number 1, will he win? Well, is that good for him? Would that be good for him? And his amazing caddy Teddy Scott would be good for those two to win the Masters again? All we know is that's what they would like. All I know is that you have your desires of what you want to have happen in your life, Jack, and you have your fears of what you don't want to have happen. But I also know that those desires that you have could be the worst thing for you, and the fears that you have could be the best thing for you. And the same thing for me. I mean, I know things that I want. I could clearly tell you some things that I would really like to have and things that I would really not like to have. I don't want to get poked in the eye. I don't want to stub my toe. I don't want to, have, I don't want there to be another pandemic. There's a lot of things that I do not want to have happen, but they may be what I need to become the person that I'm meant to become. And so holding your life and your desires loosely is so important, and transferring the desire from I need to I would like, first of all, because there's a sign in the wall in the book Inner Excellence of this monastery, and it says, "Dear guests, thank you so much for visiting. If there's anything you need, please let us know. We'll show you how to get along without it." And so we have all these things that we think we need, but mostly they're desires.
So it's about a detachment to your desires. And if you're more attached to your desires, then you're going to have a greater fear of potentially not reaching that desire, right?
It's about having an attachment to a more empowering desire.
Okay.
It's not, so stoicism is very powerful, and it's kind of like, just meditate and don't think about anything, meditation is very powerful. Prayer, even more powerful, very similar. But, there's this pro athlete that asked me, he said, "I'm too attached to my results. What do I need to do?" And this was a very successful athlete, top 10 in the world. And I said, well, imagine a kid loves lollipops and he's got a lollipop and you want to take it from him. How could you easily take the lollipop from him? Well, you would trade him for a bigger lollipop. What kid wouldn't trade their little lollipop for a bigger lollipop, right? And I said, that's what you need. Your biggest lollipop right now is having success on the course, hitting good shots and rolling good putts and getting good bounces. And you need something bigger than your results. Otherwise, you're always going to be a fear of losing out and fear of bad results and circumstances.
It reminds me of something you said, which is people come to me for happiness and they leave with joy. You help them with joy. It goes back to the attachment to your goal and having a more worthy ideal of a goal, in the sense that what we all want is that joy, and what we think will bring us that joy isn't always correct. I guess that's that's the way I've heard it phrased before you said that, right? Where we really don't know what is going to bring us that joy, and we have to let go kind of our control in getting that. But I think it's a really interesting dynamic, because obviously if we want something really bad, and if we do want to achieve things, and if we want to move forward in our life, we have to have some type of commitment, and still some type of I'm not gonna stop going for this. I think of your story actually in thinking about this, where you were so committed to your success as a professional baseball player, and then something happened. You had an injury with your eye that ended up making it so you could not continue toward that goal. But I imagine you were so committed toward that goal before that happened, and you had to detach from it. I think that that's an interesting dynamic to speak on, the attachment, in the sense of we need to attach to something, we need to commit to something in order to achieve. What do you think about that?
Obsessed, you're right. I was obsessed with being a superstar. And the problem is, when you're obsessed with being a superstar, it's very results oriented. So since I've started, the majority of my clients have the best year of their career our first year together. And this has gone on for decades in any sport. And it's a very countercultural thesis that self-centeredness is the biggest challenge that we face. And we never talk about winning. That's not even a word that I use, winning or losing, because you don't know what's best for you. But we do talk about personal growth. In fact, I just had this conversation with a Major League Baseball player the day before opening day last week. And he was saying, okay, so what do I need to do to have a great season? And I said, you need to focus on personal growth. If you don't, it's going to become all about batting average and all your numbers. And when you're immersed in a world that's obsessed with statistics and you're in it 24/7, it's going to lead to overthinking and negative thinking and self-consciousness and all those things that are going to hold you back. And so your life has to be more about growing as a person and developing more self-awareness and walking in love, not fear, and all of those powerful things. And that will help you be a better baseball player.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's less about the metrics and more about that internal goal, that internal feeling that you're trying to grow as a person. How do you help someone like that? Because I mean, they've grown so much in their career, I imagine, by focusing on improving the numbers and improving the average and the WAR and all of those things that have determine their career. Those numbers determine how much they get paid. Those numbers determine how much they play. So how do you help someone like that reframe their mindset toward the personal growth aspect when their entire career they've had to focus in order to advance on those numbers?
Hmm. Well, we have to get to a place of freedom. And one of the biggest limiters of freedom is the part of our mind that's always threatened and always comparing, always on trial, like I shared. And so when I think about mastering the ego, I think about being unembarrassable, unoffendable, and unirritable. And so you can think about it as someone that's watching this. Are you taking this personal? This event that you just had, you're frustrated. Are you taking it personal? Because when you take things personal, that's the ego that's hurting you. It's limiting your life. It's just like, when you're offended or being embarrassed, you can't be humiliated if you're fully humble. I define humility as an accurate view of self, not overinflated and not underinflated. And but if your ego is what would hurt you, ego would be what would be embarrassed. The ego would be offended. And so that really limits a person's life. It creates this fear of, well, what if, you're always on defense? Like, what if someone says something that disrespects me? Then I've got to defend myself. And you're not going to live the life that you're created to live if you're constantly in defense.
What would you say the opposite of that defense is? Like, where are you now when someone for example criticizes your work? What is your go-to response instead of
Jack, that's an
defense?
amazing question. The opposite of the ego defense. It is to have a real sense of creativity, possibility, freedom, joy. And it's just not possible when you're defending yourself. It's not it's just like compassion is not possible or available when you're busy or in a hurry. To have freedom, real freedom, there can't be a fear of, well, you can't be in self-defense mode. There can't be self-protection. Then you're not going to have freedom. And then you'll be worried about, okay, well, that person just disrespected me. I need to do something about it. Or, that's really embarrassing. Now I've got to be careful or whatever it is. And so the basic idea is that selfless is fearless. And if there's no self to defend, then that's where the greatest performances are. That's where the greatest art is created. And when you see the greatest art, that's how you feel. There's no sense of self. It's all merged into the moment.
Well, it seems like ego defense isn't really defending yourself to other people. Maybe it seems like that, but it's really defending yourself to yourself. It's defending who you think you are to the ego that you have right now and trying. Maybe it's a fear of change or it's a fear of truly embracing the freedom that you're talking about. Because when I think of that freedom, it's the ability to truly be who you are authentically. And when you are defending who you think you are, who you've been attached to yourself, I don't think you get that freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. It's the ego defense is like, when I'm defending myself, it's like, hey, look, I want to feel good about myself. And I don't feel good enough when you say that, because then now I start to think things that are bad about me. And so I want to say something so I can try to feel okay about myself.
It's almost like we can be here and we can live at this point, right? And then in order to to go any higher in terms of well-being or freedom or whatever you call it, you have to first contradict the ego and have a period of that discomfort. And I've heard you talk about that discomfort is where we grow. And I think it's because we end up uh kind of imposing new thoughts and like shaking up our subconscious a little bit in our identity. And that's where most people quit. How do we I think it's so easy from my perspective, from my listeners' perspectives, to understand that this discomfort, that's where we grow. That's where the highest performers, they choose to push forward through that discomfort so they can reach that higher point, right? But how do we actually implement that? I've heard so many people say you have to understand that you have to make the decision in the moment, weigh the benefits, whatever. But how do you manipulate your subconscious to actually making that decision when it comes down to it?
Well, first of all, is make sure your number one goal is to learn and grow. If your number one goal is to get a good result, if you don't have a clear system of inner excellence, then your system is going to be the default, and the default is self protection. Um, the default is self-centeredness that leads to fear. And someone says something mean to you, then you're going to react in defense, and it's going to create this negative energy within you. And so, the most important thing about you is your energy, because that's your beliefs are energy. Beliefs are feelings and energy, and so beliefs are what's running your life. So, learning how to expand what you believe is possible is crucial, and I can share with you how to do that if you like.
Would love to hear.
Yeah. So every day there's tension. There's tension in the world, tension in your life, and what I mean by tension is there's discomfort from things that either don't go as planned or aren't as you would like them to be. Is there anything in your life that is not exactly how you would like it to be? You'd like it to be different?
Yeah, I can think of a few things. For
Yeah. I mean,
example,
everybody.
yeah, for example, I mean, I'm just starting speaking right now, which is really exciting. I had a TEDx talk last week, and
Amazing.
I'd like to be on more stages. I'd like to be on more stages than I currently am, with higher fees than I currently have. Yeah, I would like that.
Well, we can talk about public speaking because for a lot of people, it's very scary, and it was very scary for me in the past. Um, so let's imagine someone has a fear of public speaking, and they have a presentation to make. So there's 5 questions that I want that person to ask. And number 1 is am I willing to face my fears? 2 is am I willing to fail? 3 is am I willing to look
Mhm.
foolish? 4 is am I willing to face any feeling? And 5 is am I willing to sit with any feeling even if it never goes away?
Ooh, five's a hard one.
Yeah, so most people are not willing to face any feeling. It's like a panic attack. Panic attacks are
Mhm.
this start with a feeling that grows. And so, people that have had panic attacks, that's like, I'm okay with anything except for that one feeling. I just don't want that feeling because that feeling would create this out of control situation. And so, what we do is with Inner Excellence is we go look for the feeling that we hate, and because that is our teacher and our helper. Why is it our teacher and our helper? Because Inner Excellence is about living the best possible life. Best possible life means becoming someone you've never been before, continuing to learn and grow. That discomfort is showing you where you can grow. And it's also going to help you grow because you wouldn't ask for this discomfort on your own. It's given to you. It's a gift. And the most important thing about these moments of discomfort is not the result. The result doesn't matter at all. What matters is you're embracing the discomfort. If you can continually embrace the feeling that you hate in the moment, no matter how your performance was or no matter how your talk was, eventually your skills will match the moment.
So, do you find any patterns between people in terms of like different archetypes of a person and then the feelings that they're most often afraid of?
Well, rejection is the greatest fear for most people.
Yeah.
That's our we have this divided heart. We're born with a divided heart. Part of our heart is um, this heart that's created in God's image, where we have this deep need for love. Every human heart has a deep need for love. But then the other part of our heart is that we're self-centered. It's human nature, and so they're divided. We Part of our heart is like, I just want love and peace and joy, and the other part is I just want to get what I call the PALMS acronym: possessions, achievements, looks, money, and status. PALMS. I just want to
Yeah.
get more of those because then I can be somebody.
Then I can be somebody. That's an important word. Did you feel that when you were coming up in the Cubs organization? Did you feel that you had to become a superstar, as you said, to then be somebody or be worthy of feeling any inner excellence?
Oh, Jack, I'll tell you exactly how it worked. When I walk into the clubhouse at spring training, there's a definite hierarchy. There's really two things: how high were you drafted, or three things: how high were you drafted, what level did you play at last year, and what team are you on right now? Because in the Cubs, there's like in spring training, there's like 6 teams in the minor leagues when I was there,
Hmm.
and there's numbered 1 through 5 or 1 through 6. So, what team are you on right now? How high were you drafted? What level did you play at last year? And what were your stats last year?
Yeah.
And there's a very clear hierarchy. Whenever you walked in, everyone in my level, they all wanted to be at the next level, and people at the next level want to be at the next level. And so when someone walks in the locker room, you look and see who it is, and there's right away, it's like, oh, that person is that person, and that's has that status, and I do not have that status. And so yeah, it
Immediate
was very
comparison.
clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so fascinating because that exact idea around arrival fallacy and all that is why I started this podcast. When I was 16, I felt like I still needed to do so much more, even though I was a 3 sport athlete. I was getting perfect grades, and I had a great social life, but I'm like, I still need more to be enough.
Mm.
So I made a
Back
crazy
when you were a
decision.
kid.
Yeah, I mean, this was only 3 years ago, but it's still I was I moved to France alone for my junior year of high school,
That's
and
amazing.
I I'm like, "I don't know French, but I'm gonna learn everything here," and so I said I had 3 goals that year. I was like, "I'm gonna make French friends, I'm gonna learn French, and I'm gonna start an online business," and by the end of the year, I got all 3 of these goals, and I was still empty, still. I'd literally done everything I was supposed to want. I had it. And I had this moment where I was standing in front of a mirror and I looked at myself and was like, something needs to change. You can't keep doing things and expect to feel the feeling you want once you've done them, right? And I've noticed that so many people are in the same boat. In my TED talk, I talked about Michael Phelps, who in 2012 spent 4 days alone in his room, depressed after winning 6 medals and becoming the most decorated Olympian of all time, right? And I know, I mean, it happens to almost every high achiever where we think once we get somewhere, we're going to feel a certain way. So I created what I call the duality of gratitude and ambition, where we need to both be extremely grateful for what we have right now while still wanting to grow and pursue more, not out of a need for it, but out of a want for growth. And I think it aligns so deeply with what you do and the reason that you started your your journey and the journey of creating inner excellence in the first place.
Jack, you sound like a NFL football coach named Sean McVay. He's got on his above his computer a sign that says "Urgent Joy," and
Enjoy.
um, yeah, I really like that. Because essentially how he describes it is there should be a sense of urgency to you in your life, but also there should be a joy to it, and I feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, you've said that you can be like excellent and perform, and that those two things, being extraordinary in your performance and deep fulfillment, are the same. It's the same path. How did you discover that?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jack. I'm in the desert, and You said earlier, I gave away over half my possessions, went to go live a life of solitude in the Sonoran Desert, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. I just knew that I wanted to do something great with my life that was meaningful. And then when I was there, I decided to become a personal coach to professional baseball players and teach them how to have peace and confidence under pressure. And my first few athletes did extraordinary. And so I thought, okay, let's put together a manual for future clients. And I started to call up a sports
By did extraordinary, do you mean they did extraordinary in their inner world or their performance?
What did I tell you earlier?
You said that your first few athletes, your first few clients, they
Oh,
did extraordinary.
performance. Yeah, performance.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
one was one of the biggest rookie stories of the year in Major League Baseball. And before we had met, he was a career minor leaguer, never played in the big leagues. And another was a girl who played catcher at the University of Arizona, and she had her freshman year hit like 150 or something. And we visualized her getting the game-winning hit off the best pitcher in the country to win the College World Series the next year, and that's essentially what she did. So my first few athletes had extraordinary success, tangible success. And so I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And ironically, they have this extraordinary success based on doing the inner work. We don't talk about winning or things like that, or success or failure. We talk about growth. And so I'm in the desert, and at first it was just like, okay, I'm going to be this coach, and I'm going to put together this manual on how to have the most peace and confidence under the most pressure. And the best book ever written on mental toughness. That's what I wanted to write. And then as I'm doing the work and the research, I realized that I don't want to devote my life to something that's not meaningful. So what if I help Jack become world number one, and but there's no meaning? Or what if I help someone become an Olympic gold medalist and they're not a good person? What did I do anything good? And then so kind of the timeline was, at some point I realized that the heart is the key to your life, your spirit, your will, the deepest part of you, where your greatest fears are and your greatest dreams are. And I realized, wow, that's the key. We're far more than thinking machines. We got to get deeper than your thoughts. And so we use the mind to train the heart. But how do we train the heart? And so I was perplexed. And then I realized that the training needed to have the most peace and confidence and the most poise under the most pressure is the same training to live the best possible life, a life of deep contentment, joy, and confidence in any situation. And that's training the heart, and it's training it to be wholehearted and letting everything else be added to you. So, like I said, we have a divided heart. It's the human nature of being self-centered, and then the other part of us that's created in God's image that wants to love and serve and connect, and the joy that comes from that. And so it's really learning to master the self-centered part of us, the ego part of us that's always threatened and always comparing. And the illusion that says, if I get more of these achievements and success and looks and money and status, that I'm going to get what I really want. And say, what I help people do is I help people clarify what they want most, and I help them get it. Like you said earlier, they come to me looking for better results and circumstances, essentially better transactions, which I translate as to happiness, which is a positive temporary feeling based on what's happening. And I teach them how to have joy, which is a deep sense of well-being and freedom and gratitude and inner buoyancy and delight that comes from sacrificial love.
Did you have that feeling before you started teaching people how to get it?
The joy? Well, the first version of Inner Excellence came out in 2009, and I had a near mental breakdown when it came out. I'd spent 5 years full-time writing and researching. I spent my life savings, went $90,000 in debt, and I met this guy who started to tell me about my life, but I never met him before. I wrote about this in The Best Possible Life. And he said, you're banging your head against the wall. You're not getting anywhere. You're always obsessing about some goal. And it's ironic because you wrote a book about being present, and you're never present. You're just always obsessing about the future. And he was right. And so, I really think about inner excellence and The Best Possible Life like artists do, I'm just a small part of this. 2% max of these two books. So we have Inner Excellence and we have The Best Possible Life that just came out. I'm a tiny part of that. And I'm just the messenger that's along for the ride.
So do you do you think that that joy that you teach, is it something that you get and you stay there? Or once you get it, can you come back down to the pursuit of just the material things, as you said?
Good questions, Jack. So here's how I think about it. Well, joy comes from sacrificial love. And one of the biggest challenges that we face is busyness and hurry. And what has happened to me a lot, and I think is very, very common, is that I would get caught up in details of my life and all the transactions, and so much of it's out of my control. And that would create this anxiety and lack of joy. And so, in order to have joy, I need to either connect with the source of joy, source of love, or I need to share unconditional love. Either one of those two. And when I'm mired in my circumstances and trying to battle it out, and it's too much out of my control and it's not working, then there's a definite lack of joy. And so there needs to be a system where you regularly pull yourself out of your circumstances and into the place of unlimited love, joy, and peace, and wisdom, and courage. And that's really about designing your life where you're filling your spirit with wisdom, like empowering podcasts and sermons and music that's enriching and nature.
So it's
And people,
taking time away from, it's taking time away from your pursuit of achievement, and taking time away from that to be present in the now. So whether that be for me, that's meditation or nature, as you said, or sport, or it's climbing, right? Or my relationships. When you were in the desert, I imagine I've spent some time alone, solo traveling, or just in the mornings working out, whatever.
you're a
My
world
time
traveler,
alone.
Jack.
I find that in my time alone, it's been either really far to the extreme of I'm very present right now and I'm very focused in this moment, or it's I have nothing to distract me from my full on pursuit of changing my circumstances and of changing and of achieving my goal. Do you think that your time in the desert, did you have to balance between those two things, or were you able to really root in that presence to be able to come up with the idea of inner excellence?
I think mostly I was not present. Mostly
No,
I had a
okay.
lot of fear, um, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, um, and it was a miracle. God did a miracle.
How did it happen?
So in Best Possible Life, I talk about Michael Phelps, as you did, and I said, let's look at the possibly the greatest achievement in Olympic history: 23 Olympic gold medals, more than most countries have ever won in their history. So, who gets the credit for that? For Michael Phelps? Like, if we were to divide it between God or the universe and Michael, how much does God get or the universe get, and how much does Michael get? So 50-50 would be, so if we divide it up in out of 100%, how much is Michael? I mean, he made the choices, and he did all this work. So is it 90% Michael and 10% God, or 50-50? What is it? And in the book, I said, obviously, this is just a thought experiment. There's no way to know, but exactly. But I would put the numbers at 98% and 2%. Michael definitely deserves a lot of credit because of how hard he worked, and so he gets 2% credit. And that's because, well, why only 2%? Every single thing that he achieved and did was based on gifts that he was given. Like, how does he win? Well, let's start with his body. he's not going to win all those gold medals if he's handicapped and lives in a wheelchair, has only got one arm, or quadriplegic, or is 5'2", or whatever it is. He's got to have a body that's conducive to winning gold medals. And so, how much did he do to have that DNA? Well, 0 for the DNA, right? It's just his parents. He didn't choose his parents. Well, how did he get into swimming? He had to have parents that put him into a pool. And what if he was born 400 years ago in Afghanistan? There's 0 chance of getting any medals because there was no Olympics 400 years ago. Most likely he's a peasant. So he had to be born in the right country, to the right parents, in the right century. So many things. And then even to have a mind that's like, okay, I'm going to work out today. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's hypothyroid. And there was days during COVID when I was eating poorly. There's no gym to work out at. And I felt so much fatigue and brain fog. I didn't get out of bed. If you would have said, "Hey, would you like to go work out in the pool or do something?" I would be, yes, I would love to if I could. And so those were all gifts that Michael had. And so if Michael's maybe one of the greatest achievements in sporting history, he only gets 2% of the credit. How much credit do I get?
0.5.
Yeah, so 2% I think is the max. If I did everything that I could to be successful, 2% would be the max that I would take, and God would be 98%.
Wow.
Also takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, it does. Well, I'm thinking about it in the way that I grew up in my household. My mom, she was always very. So let me back up. My parents divorced when I was about 3 years old, and so I split my time evenly between two houses. My mom, who's very spiritual, she's a yoga teacher. She spent some time in Nepal. We have Buddhist prayer flags up.
Wow.
Both of my parents grew up in going to church, and both of them stopped going to church. My mom kept that spiritual aspect, and she meditates. She's a very spiritual soul. She talks about the universe all the time. My dad is very atheist, and he always said that why would I give something else credit? And I think my dad and I have had a lot of conversations about this, because as I grow, I become increasingly spiritual, and I do become increasingly grateful to just everything out here for the magic that it brings me. I had a moment the other day where I was walking in London, massive city, and a guy that followed me and found my podcast, which it's not like it has millions of followers, walked right across from me on the streets of London by Piccadilly Circus. And he was so stunned, he didn't even say something, but he sent me a message later that day. And he was like, "Hey Jack, I'm starting a podcast. I would love some advice. I listened to your most recent episode. It's amazing." And so we went and we got dinner that night, and we talked about his growing podcast. And it's moments like
Amazing.
that where it's like there has to be something that you give credit to, because you can't have this full credit. And I imagine that for athletes, almost all of them that I've heard, and you've spoken to so many incredible athletes, are very spiritual, and they're very attached to God. And I think that it definitely has something to do, I've always thought, with that detachment, with the fact that, all right, if I fail, it's meant to be. It's not my fault. Is that one of the biggest reasons, you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's redefining success and failure, and really realizing that, well, you don't know what's best for you, and also the whole 98 and 2 idea, that 2% is all the credit I can take. The main reason I thought about that and wrote about it in the book is because of how powerful gratitude is. There's some great podcasts that have that in the name even. And so it's because gratitude is directly linked to inner peace, and inner peace is directly linked to inner strength, and inner strength to mental toughness, and they're all linked to beauty. And so, if I think about atheism, I think about one that everybody worships. There's no atheist. It's just like, what do you put your faith in? Like, okay, you don't believe that there's a creator of the universe, but you believe in the universe. So what do you? I mean, you weren't there when it was created or started. So what are you believing in? I think it takes just as much faith to believe that it started from some random explosion, and all the intricate, incredible beauty that you see in the human mind and love. How do you explain all this? It takes, I think, more faith than to think that there's a creator. And so everybody worships and everybody has a God. It's just what is your God, and gratitude, whether you're an atheist or not. And part of this, and I'd love to see what your dad thinks about this book, because part of it was written for atheists to help them think about. I'm not saying you need to think how I think. In fact, I don't really give advice. I just help people clarify what they want most. I ask a lot of questions, then I help them get what they want most. And most people don't know what they want most. Most people are very circumstantial focused. They just want better results in circumstances.
Which I talked about this in my TED Talk, but our circumstances, Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky found, only contribute to about 10% of our happiness. So if we have the hedonic adaptation line, right? And it only can raise our baseline about 10%. Whereas if we use intentional daily action, if we take intentional daily action, whether that's toward our goals or just to growth in general, that's 40%. It's 4x our circumstances. Most of us spend our entire lives optimizing for the smallest slice of the equation and being confused when nothing changes. We optimize for this small slice of 10% that is our circumstances. And then we maybe get what we want, and that's why we're confused when nothing changes. I think that it's so important that you do reframe. You take away the idea of success, the idea of failure. You don't use the word winning or losing, because even I've tried to detach a lot from it, and I struggle sometimes where uh, I really am still attached to outcomes in many ways, and I've worked so hard on it. I find myself using the words failure, losing, winning so often, even in the pursuit of trying to not do so. So I think using that vocabulary is so important. At what point did you start to understand that your vocabulary really does shape your belief systems in that way, and really does shape how you're focusing on winning, losing?
Well, there's a discipline of inner excellence called speak the truth. Speak the truth to about the past to create possibilities in the future. And this is, I don't know when this came about, this discipline, but it's been around. I've been using it for decades, at least one decade. Um, and the way the discipline works is that, say, for example, one of the listeners or viewers has had anxiety, and say that person came on the show, and then they started sharing about it, and they said, um, "Well, I'm an anxious person," and I would say, "Is that how you want to be?" Because like, I don't tell people what to do; I only help them. And they say, "No, I don't want to be anxious." And I say, "Okay, well, um, one, I would like to help you think, is that true? Like, you're an anxious person, like that's who you are? Because I'm guessing there's been moments of non-anxiety. Has there been ever a moment where you did not have anxiety? And then if that's true, then I think the truth would be to say, not that I'm an anxious person, but the truth would be, in the past I've had anxiety." And so then I would have them say that out loud. Say, "I want you to say out loud, for the last time in your life, I'm an anxious person." Say that out loud. Or, "My anxiety is stressful," or you're taking ownership of the anxiety and calling it yours. Say something like that out loud and see how it feels. And it's, probably going to get a negative feeling. And then I want you to say, "In the past, I had anxiety," rather than "I'm an anxious person." Because even if you had anxiety every single day of your life up until today, it's all still past, right? So it'd still be true. In the past, I've had anxiety. And but that's a completely different feeling. You're not taking ownership of it, and you're talking about it as past tense. And beliefs are what's running our lives. And when you start to speak the truth about the past, then you really open up possibilities.
I'm thinking a lot through this conversation about the World Baseball Classic and Aaron Judge and Bryce Harper. I'm not sure how much you watched of it, but I mean, Aaron Judge has always been a player that, for any of you that are not baseball fans listening, one of the best players in the world right now in the MLB for the Yankees. And he's one of those guys that he mashes during the regular season. And then it gets to the postseason and he sucks. And then
In the
as a
past,
huge
yeah.
Phillies fan, uh, Bryce Harper, he had a terrible World Baseball Classic, and it got to the most
Mhm.
important moment, and I'm getting chills thinking about it. It got to the most important moment in the entire tournament, and he destroyed a ball at the dead center for a super clutch home run, and he's always done that. And so, thinking about belief systems, what what is it that can make somebody that is so good all the time and just freeze and stop performing in these big moments? And then some people, they have that switch where they might, like, yeah, Bryce Harper is an incredible baseball player, but he just turns it on when the pressure's on. When he's needed most, he plays his best.
So, when Aaron Judge watches this, I'll help him with this right now. So, first of all, make sure that you speak about it as past tense. In the past, I didn't have great success in the playoffs, um, but also recognize that um, it's natural for someone in his shoes to put more pressure on themselves in the playoffs because, especially in New York City, you have, millions of people staring at you and wanting you to do so well. And then you don't have, one good playoff and then they all talk about it. It's not like a regular person who, you know, has a bad day at work. Like there's not millions of people going to be judging him and talking about it. And so, what you've been through is very common with superstars, and but it has no impact on your future, especially if you understand that how you talk about it, how you think about it, and what your mindset is the most important thing. You can go down as the greatest clutch hitter in the history of the game. That's what's possible for you, Aaron.
I love that, and I hope that he does watch that. And yeah, I think that just the idea that so many people are looking at him and talking about it, it must become very easy to reinforce a belief when you're a professional athlete, because so many people are going to talk about it negatively. Even if you just made one mistake, it can be really easy to get to a pattern because you have so much exterior feedback that uses that language that you yourself wouldn't want to use, and reinforces that idea that you might be that type of person. You might not have just done that in the past.
Hmm. Exactly.
So, thinking about Bryce Harper, though, what is it that makes him able to perform so well in these clutch situations?
Belief is such a powerful, powerful thing, and one thing that a lot of professional athletes have done, maybe Aaron as well, is when they're a little kid, most likely they've grown up dreaming about hitting a game-winning home run in Game 7 of the World Series. And so, the more that you dream that and continue to make that alive and cultivate that in your imagination, the more your brain sees it as real, and the more comfortable it gets. And so learning to be fully present is crucial. And I think Bryce has gotten better at that and is good at that, and being present and not carrying the past with him. And probably has had a good imagination where he's felt it, seen it, felt it happen many times, and just stays with that belief.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a continuity of belief. It's repetition of that belief. That makes sense. Well, Jim,
Getting the
I learned
feelings.
so much today. Yes, and making yourself feel it. Exactly. I'm I've learned so much today. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to be on here. We're both traveling in Airbnbs, and we're making the time to have a fantastic conversation. I think it's so important that people continue to immerse themselves in your material, because we talked a lot today, but there's so much more that you have to offer. So tell people where they can find your work and why it's so important that they get your newest book, which is your most important book.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a newsletter on Substack. Comes out several times a month, sometimes weekly, and it's really just coaching ideas that I share with my clients and share it with the world. And I'm doing live Q&As as well for $7 a month on Substack. You can sign up on my website, innerexcellence.com, or just go to Substack and find Inner Excellence Jim Murphy. I'm also on social media. Instagram is Inner Excellence Jim Murphy. Yeah, I would love to do this again, Jack. And thank you for sharing your life with me.
Thank you, Jim. This has been a great conversation.